Welcome to the Clean Power Hour Live. I'm Tim Montague, your host. Every Thursday, we bring you the latest in solar, wind, and energy storage news. You can check out all of our content at cleanpower.group. And we're going to be talking about a strategic partnership between the U.S. and Canada around exotic minerals. We're going to be talking about space aliens. The Midwest Solar Expo is coming up next week. Welcome to the show, John Weaver and the Commercial Solar Guy, my co-host. Welcome.
Hey, Timothy, thank you.
So good to see you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's very nice to see you as well. Pardon my weird location. I'm slowly moving around. I got a new office place, which is really cool and has all kinds of neat rooms, but I don't know how to use any of the rooms yet and sign in, and I didn't want to risk messing up my always amazing audio visual setups that I do. Yeah.
Well, it is good. It's good to get some practice before you go live, so to speak. But no worries,
Yes.
no worries. I'm just happy
Working
that
on
you're
it.
here.
Yeah.
Just so our listeners know, we will be dark for a couple of weeks. I will be traveling to Minneapolis and then to North Carolina, so I'll be on the road for 2 weeks. But that's all good. And
And what are you
looking
doing
forward.
in Minneapolis, Timothy?
That is the Midwest Solar Expo. They're in their 8th year, organized by Jake Rosemarin. Shout out to Jake Rosemarin of Antenna Media. He was the founder of that conference, and then before his company got bought by Antenna. But great little conference. There'll be about 400 solar professionals across the industry, financiers, developers, EPCs, manufacturers, and podcasters like myself. I'll be wearing multiple hats. I will be moderating a couple of sessions. We'll be talking to Mr. O'Grady, who is the executive director of MNCEA, the Minnesota Solar Energy Industries Association. I'll be hosting a panel on technology for O&M and asset management, and then another one on utility scale solar, where we're talking about constituent relations. The title is something like "Can't We All Get Along?" And but we have some great experts on stage for that session, including Mortensen, the ginormous EPC, is going to be there, and yeah, several others. I gotta bring that page up before I open my mouth. But yeah, just looking forward to Minneapolis. Shout out to Eric Passy. I'll be seeing Eric as well at IPS and many other friends. I am making an ask of the organizers of Midwest Solar Expo to consider moving the conference to Chicago. If you have an opinion about that, please reach out to me, because I just think that Illinois is basically starting to eclipse Minnesota. Minnesota was an early adopter here in the Midwest, John, and they got a community solar market rolling a few years before we did. But they're struggling now. Their legislation is not coming along as fast as ours is, and we now have a good 10-year run, and they're in a bit of a stall. So I have nothing against Minneapolis. I love going there, but I just think Chicago is probably an easier place for people to get to overall. And we do attract an audience nationally. So, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I have one experience each in Minneapolis and Chicago. And Chicago, the experience involved me driving to 5 small pizza places so I could test out 5 types of deep dish pizza. And so, from that angle, I think
Right.
Chicago's pretty awesome. Um, my one time in Minneapolis, I had cheese curds downtown, and they were awesome. But I also spent about 3 or 4 days as a sales guy going to a farming conference in southern western Minnesota, I believe. And I learned a whole bunch about corn, and I was given beer, and I was invited out to people's farms, and that was pretty great. So I'm not going to take a position here. I'm just going to say there's pizza in Chicago, there's cheese curds and nice farmers in Minnesota, and y'all folks are going to have to figure that out.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong anywhere in the Midwest, honestly. But I just think ease of access, and now there's so much more competition. You know, there's literally a conference every month you could go to if you wanted
Yes,
to.
you could.
So as that, it's it's great because the industry is growing, and that's why we do have so many events now, uh, and that's just going to continue. But this is a very reasonable little event. Check it out at MidwestSolarExpo.com, and you can get a 15% discount with the code CPH15. And I know that they're still taking registration, so it's not too late. And the conference is June 20th to 22nd. The 20th is just an opening reception in the evening. So the main event is the Tuesday, the 21st and 22nd. So especially for our Midwest listeners, uh, it's not a bad drive. I think it's a 7-hour drive from me here in Central Illinois. So I'll be hitting the road Sunday, and then coming back Wednesday night. And then I'm going to Asheville, North Carolina. I'm super excited for that. Um, to go hiking in the Blue Ridge Mountains with my sons
Beautiful.
who are visiting from Norway, and drinking a lot of beer. Asheville is one of the beer capitals of the U.S., and there's a lot of good live music there as well. But the mountains is what really attracts me to Asheville. Great mountains, great nature.
My mom lives about 45 minutes away from there. Working on buying a piece of land, off-grid house, solar, log cabin, metal roof for her so that we can visit occasionally.
Yeah.
And my brother went to App State as well. If you go up really high, dark at night, you're going to find some windy ridges. We used to like to do that and just kind of hang out at like midnight when the wind was blowing like a monster. As well, they recently, the city of that you're headed up to, or maybe it's Boone County, but their utility recently rescinded a very strong monthly fee for solar people that install solar. So hopefully there should be a little pickup in solar there. Residential specifically. So
Yeah.
all that. There you go.
Yeah, the Carolinas have a healthy solar industry. I I know for sure that there's a lot of CNI in South Carolina. Not so sure about North Carolina, but there's several very experienced solar companies, including Palladium Energy, based in Asheville, and
Cypress Creek came out of North Carolina pretty much,
Cypress
didn't
Creek. That's right. They have an office in Asheville, so there's a lot of Cypress alumni around and spin-offs from Cypress. But I have Palladium, a gentleman named Chang, coming on the show. I don't know when that interview is going to drop, but that was a very interesting interview. We talked about the solar coaster. He got into solar in '09. A young guy.
Cool.
He's in his maybe late 20s. And so he's, you know, he is truly, we joke in the interview, he's a grizzled veteran of the solar industry. His first utility scale project was 1 megawatt.
Sweet.
And that was in California. And now he's doing, multi-100 megawatt projects. So that's pretty cool to get to know people like that who have seen the industry develop and grow. We're going to talk about.
I was just waiting for the right moment to transition to this.
Yes.
So now it's
really
time for
wanna-
lead qualification, ladies and gentlemen. Who's a good solar lead?
Yeah, what is a good solar lead and project? It's a both and. I want to talk with you, John, how you see this world. What are the 3 to 5 things that you're looking for in a CNI specifically, so behind the meter commercial solar project, when it comes off the transom?
So for me, since we're of course focused in Mass and Rhode Island, I pay attention to the utility that it's located in. I look at their roof, how much space they have, whether it's new, whether it's old. Try to determine if the person that's contacting me or that I'm in contact with, reaching out to, is the owner of the structure or just the occupant. And if they're an owner occupant, which of course I believe is the best, Um,
Yep.
the uh, the structure itself, what it's among, the local power grid. When we get a new lead in, we do three or four things. We first look at the local hosting capacity map. We next send it to engineering to do a drawing, and then we last check out the incentives. We do a Gantt chart, do a financial model. Those items come together pretty quickly, an hour or two, a couple of hours, and within that we do a lot of vetting. Then we get an electricity bill, figure out what these people are, and that's before you talk to the human being in the business, because then you got to figure out if how much electricity they use, what kind of system we could potentially connect. But
Yeah, I think getting the
roof.
energy data as early as possible is quite important. Um, what is the load, so to speak, relative to the size of the roof or piece of
Mm,
ground around the building? You want to always try to offset 100% of the load, but sometimes the load is just too big, and sometimes the roof is too small. Sometimes you have a big roof but not a big load, like a warehouse where there's just storing stuff happening might have a huge roof and a small load, and then you go, well, 200 kW project, okay, we'll look at it, but um, and
That's
then
funny that
motivation.
you'll
Sorry.
look at you will look at 200 kW projects. That's amusing. I love installing. That's like that's right in my wheelhouse. I can handle that in house, my own financing. So I that's kind of funny. The size difference, the projects that you've dealt with versus the projects that I've actually built, very small versus your big work. So that's interesting. So you said the motivation of the land, of the structure owner. So how much they're paying.
The motivation of the owner is very important. Like, are they trying to save money? Are they trying to go green? Is there some other? Maybe they're trying to reduce their tax burden. Save, pay less taxes. Um, if they have a tax burden,
If
okay,
they
and
have one,
and they want
that's
to buy
important.
a solar project, that is a great incentive today, right? We have a 26% investment tax credit for project owners. That is stepping down to 22% in 2023, is it not, John?
Yes, sir.
Stepping down.
And then next
Um,
year to go to 10. Well, and then the year after it'll go to 10%
in
potentially.
24,
Yeah, and thereafter
right?
for
And then it'll
commercial.
stay at 10 for a while, right?
I think so. I thought it was indefinite, but maybe just a while.
Yeah. So that's why owners need to have a sense of urgency. The incentives are going to step down, right? So the savings are going to be greater earlier in the process. And there's other incentives like renewable energy credits, which we have here in Illinois. Not in all markets. These are very market specific incentives. The
Very.
RECs, okay, as we call them, are worth 30 to 40% of a project's value. They're very generous. So if you're spending $100,000 on a small commercial project, then you're getting thirty to $40,000 back in cash in the first 5 years, and that helps the project pay off and be cash positive in 7 years. If you have no incentives, then you're maybe 10, 15-year payback, right? Especially that ITC. Um, but it's a combination of things. And then we also have something called a smart inverter incentive that the Illinois Commerce Commission runs. So there's different entities that have different incentives. That's about 10 to 20% of the value of the project. And
How's
that
the
is
smart inverter?
incentivizing. Sorry?
How's the smart inverter work? Do they want to have a little bit of access to ramp your system, integrate it better into the grid?
Yeah, they want you to use UL 1741 certified inverters,
Hmm.
which allows the grid operator to throttle or otherwise control the inverter. And so if you have high penetration of solar, which we do not have, we have less than 5% of our grid coming from solar in Illinois. But once that penetration grows, then you could see a day when the grid operator goes, well, it's not a very high load day, but it's sunny and we're going to get a lot of solar, and we might want to curtail some of that solar remotely just by the few clicks of a button on a computer. And that's what these smart inverters would allow. And frankly, everyone should be installing UL 1741 inverters anyway for a whole variety of reasons, I think. Probably better cybersecurity. I don't really know. I don't know if you know anything about 1741, but remote control is one thing.
I do know that a gentleman that I work with, Mr. William Driscoll, he writes for PV Magazine USA as well. He
Yeah.
is very big on 1741, and he's actually holding out, I think, on it so that he can have it at his house. And there might be a residential benefit to having it coupled with energy storage or something, but I think he was waiting for the IQ8, which is a new module that, or a new inverter that came out from Enphase for residential, allows
Yeah.
for hypothetical off-grid running, and he's just waiting for it to be integrated into some solar panels. And I think that has 1741, and he was looking forward to that being integrated. So I also think that having a lot more control on a per module level, or just inverter, so we can manage strings with the utilities, will be really valuable going forward. Because we're going to be able to extract services like frequency and
Regulation.
other regulations from solar. And while it's won't work when the solar is not running, we can still gain services from it. The various markets around the country that are starting to see high levels of solar, they want to figure out how to use it better. California has tested 100% solar market just to see what it might look like on its grid, and it's going to be real interesting. And so having smart inverters is going to give solar greater value. Having smart distributed energy storage will give that resource greater value. It's going to build up. It's going to build up to something neat. So I'm glad you mentioned that one when talking about Illinois, and
Yeah.
you know,
And then I'll hearken real quick, and then let's
Yeah.
move into the news. You
Yeah.
said something about facility ownership, right? Facilities can be owner occupied or non owner occupied, and solar generally works better if it's owner occupied. That's kind of a no brainer. If you have a sunny roof and a roof you can put solar on, with not too many obstructions like air conditioning or whatever. But if it's third party owned, which is a huge percentage of our real estate, which we learned talking to James Geschweiler at Catalyze on an episode of the Clean Power Hour, then it's a different animal, right? Because the owner is not necessarily the payer of the electricity bill. And so the owner isn't necessarily motivated to upgrade the facility, which is what solar is considered. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there, and Catalyze is attacking that market, which is their focus, which is cool and awesome, and we want that. I don't know if you've been able to spin up any third-party owned projects, John. Have you?
I think I have one or two. But in Massachusetts, we have programs that allow you to sell 100% of the electricity to the utility. So you don't have to worry about the on-site electricity user having to utilize all of the generation, which is why sometimes in my
So
sales
there
pitch,
doesn't have to be a load at all.
not always. I mean, having a load is good, but no, because we end up installing a unique meter for some projects, and we will lease a rooftop from a company just straight up, and not to sign a PPA with the occupant, but just sell 100% to the utility. So we have we have a program in both Massachusetts and Rhode Island for standalone direct to grid connected solar in the small scale. Talking 25 kW up to a meg. And that's a space I'm very fond of being in.
That's very cool. We would have to do community solar here in Illinois if we had a big roof and we could say put a megawatt on it and then lease the roof and get subscribers to subscribe to that array, which is doable. I've been running the numbers on a project where we have this situation with a facility owner where the load is very small, but they have a big roof. And so we're looking at doing a community solar project there. The bit of a kicker there is that the rent may not be that compelling. You know,
The
the rent
dollar
that you
amount.
would pay to the facility owner for to lease their roof, right? It's $1,000 an acre, $1,200 an acre, and a big roof would be a 10-acre roof, um, and so it's
It's marginal. This is true. It's a challenge. What we sometimes will do is pull all the cash forward. We'll give them a new roof. We'll pay a higher rate, because we have to. Like in Massachusetts, they give you a small bump for being a rooftop solar project, and do our best. But smaller projects, the absolute dollar amount, a couple $1,000 per year. Um, it's just not compelling sometimes. So yes,
yeah.
so we try our best. We try our best to put our best foot forward and see what works. But owner occupants who own those projects, they do well. They get a bank loan for 100% and a fixed guaranteed return.
And then you brought up roof condition, and that is also a major factor for
Oh
rooftop
yeah.
solar. You want a roof that's in good condition, less than 10 years old, ideally,
Or really old.
or really old, and the owner's ready to replace it.
Yes.
Roofing is quite expensive, and
Mhm.
and it can really become a challenge. It's not insurmountable, and there are circumstances where you can combine the re-roofing and the solar into a single project. I've been involved in one of those projects. Went beautifully. We did a fully attached array, which is instrumental to doing this. And then it's very light, very low load. Um, so shout out to Simmons Knife and Saw in the Chicago suburbs. That's one of those projects, and the owner is not shy. He came on the show. We talked all about it. But all right, well, let's get into the news, John.
Yep.
I found a story on Reuters that the United States and Canada have entered into a strategic partnership around minerals like lithium and nickel, because these minerals are essential for electrification of transportation. It calls out specifically lithium, nickel, and cobalt. And as you and I know, China is a major force in the processing and manufacturing of batteries and battery materials. The U.S. and Canada are not today. We are slowly getting into those, and Tesla has led the way. Um, but I think this is, a very important thing and a great strategic move. I love this quote, though. You will need 6 times more lithium by 2050 than you use today in order to meet the clean energy goals. This guy named Fernandez, who I'm not sure who he was, speaking from Toronto, Canada. And that's the thing, is we are scaling. It's very early days, but we are scaling electrification of transportation, and that means we need lots of lithium. I
And
also,
copper.
yeah, I mean all metals used in electrical things, but it's the precious metals that are, I think, are the weak link, or what we call the limiting factor. Lithium is widely available. It's the third most common element in the world. We just don't have a lot of lithium mining in the U.S. or Canada. Shout out to Mangrove Lithium. I did have them on the show talking about their technology, which is an electrochemical technology for purifying lithium at the potentially at the mine mouth. But so anyway, strategic partnership. That's the words I want to hear, and just and then as we covered last week, right, the Defense Production Act being leveraged, right, to up the ante and incentivize companies to get in the game or up their game, because we need to produce more lithium, cobalt, nickel, and many other things. I'm also publishing an interview with a company called Nzinc that has a zinc battery technology. So I've just noticed that there's more and more zinc battery technologies coming on. Zinc is a highly mined. It's like the fourth most commonly mined element. So there's less of a crunch, I think, on the zinc. The cool thing about zinc batteries, Don, is that they don't catch fire. There's no thermal runaway with them, unlike lithium. So, was that a concern for you ever with a lithium battery on wheels?
As compared to the liquid gasoline battery vehicle.
Exactly. Yeah, you're sitting on this just tank of explosive fuel, right? And there's a lot of internal combustion engines fires in the country
Yeah.
on an annual basis. So I'm not particularly concerned about it, but you do see this, like New York Fire Department won't allow you to put lithium on buildings or in buildings. They've got some very restrictive requirements, right?
We're learning. We're learning. And it's understandable, if we mess up and a building burns down in New York City,
Yeah.
that could be that's a massive issue. So
Well, one of the drivers of this zinc technology was the U.S. military, because they build these things called submarines that like to run on electric power at certain times when they're in stealth mode, and you just can't have even the possibility of a thermal event on a sub or a ship, and so they're driving that research among others. Well, we're going to cover one of your stories in PV Magazine, surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
Rhode Island aims to be the first state to reach 100% renewable electricity. I don't buy that.
2030.
I don't buy that.
No?
I don't buy that. It can't be the first.
Yeah. 2033 is what they're aiming for. Nobody else is 2033. I mean, that's like 10 years away, 12 years away.
And how are they going to do that?
Mostly wind, probably, and then a decent amount of solar, and then I'm not certain what's next. Maybe some nuclear, but they said renewables, so wind and solar and something. But I gotta really learn about the details on it. So, for instance, how do you deal with not having enough wind and solar because they're intermittents? And that's a real interesting question, because we're going to watch and we're going to see what happens on a state that imports a large majority of its electricity from around the region via the wholesale market, and try to figure this out, because I'm totally interested in watching. And they don't need a lot of electricity. Like, I ran the numbers, and they have projects, and other people have ran stats. So they have two wind deals, two wind RFPs, one that's already been signed for 600 megs, and then another that's going to be like 400 megs. And those two projects alone, this will tell you much about the size of Rhode Island, those two projects alone would meet 50% of the state's needs.
Mm-hmm.
So a gig of wind, I ran really rough numbers, and a gig and a half of solar, close enough, makes sense. Gig and a half of solar and a gig of wind could bring them to 100% clean. So they don't need a lot. I don't think those are going to be the exact proportions. I think the wind will be stronger. I also think they'll sign a contract with a nuclear facility, but that's not renewable. So I'm really interested in seeing how this works out. I haven't read the bill. Christian Rosalind, he brought it to my attention a couple weeks ago that the Senate passed it. Like Tuesday, the House passed it. Now it's going to the governor. So I'm really interested in seeing how this is going to work out.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the battery discussion yet. And
Sure.
wholesale I haven't seen. So I'm just watching. I'll tell you more details as I read it and figure out the meat of the legislation.
Very good. Well, look forward to seeing how that develops. I'm all for setting ambitious goals for cleaning the grid, and so I say do it. But obviously, they're going to be growing. You ran the numbers there. They're going to have to grow at upwards of 5% per year, right? And
Well, yeah, they have numbers like the legislation. The only technical detail that was in the legislation was the percent of new renewables they had to add every year, and there were some years that it was like 9%. Like in the so it starts off at like 3 or 4% must be added per year, like these days, and then 5, and then 6, 6.5 through the 2020s. By the time you get to like 2029, they're saying you got to add like 8.5%. 2030, probably that's where the 8.5 is. 2031, 9. 2032 and 33, 9.5 each, something like that. And that's the only technical information in the document. Is like this is what you have to do. How to do it? We're gonna leave that for the future politicians. And so that's really where I'm interested. I mean, again, they're halfway there with the wind capacity, but the wind slows down in the summer, and in the winter it just doesn't stop blowing. It's 50, 60, 70% capacity factor, but we'll see. I'm just super interested in watching how this interaction of regional wholesale, local wind and solar, and whatever else comes next interacts. It's a good experiment though. Rhode Island is small. It's a very calculable volume of electricity, and it's surrounded by a lot of power grids. So I'm hopeful.
I think we should skip the story about China and space aliens just because you've got a couple of the good stories there. I like talking about space aliens, but
Space aliens.
the odds of them being real are very, very small. Not space aliens on some distant planet, I guess, but the odds of them coming anywhere near Earth are very small because of the great filter. But you have some drama going on around charging your EV.
No drama.
No drama? Are you sure? I sense a little bit of drama.
No,
And
not
this
at all.
is an interesting topic. I think charging needs to be a smooth experience. Elon
Yeah.
figured that out. But what's the story here?
Well, I wouldn't call it drama. I would say that initially it was harder for me to charge than a Tesla. It took an extra, 2-3 minutes, and I've had to figure it out. And it's still not perfectly smooth. Different. This is just one charging manufacturer that I've learned this technique on. As well, when I was there, I had to help other people to charge their vehicle, and I don't think the charger was interacting with the Audi. It was a nice SUV, silver-looking SUV, and so there were issues by others, and so they ended up going to a different charger. But for my purposes, what I've discovered is that there's a neat little 1, 2, 3 steps where you first, and this makes it one extra step than Tesla, because Tesla, you drive up, you plug in, you're charging. That's it. No thinking. At Electrify, if you add in the step in between of opening the app and activating the specific charger that's in front of you, then plug in, you're good. So that's what I wanted to show off. It's that I have been taught this by a person who was charging at the site, and he goes, "Yeah, ignore the notation where they tell you to plug your car in first." He goes, "Activate the charge stall first, then plug in your car, and it's just gonna run." And that's it, because I'm signed in on the app. Hey, there goes all of us. Oh wait, there you go. There's some pictures. So there's 3 pictures there. Click on that one first. So first thing you do is when you open the app, you'll pick the charger. The Prius Dartmouth Mall. So whichever one's near you will be on a map. You highlight it, and then it's going to show you things down below, all the chargers. And once you click on one charger, for instance, charger 1, you then swipe to charge. And it turns on. And the charger says, please plug in. And it's just, and I'm usually doing it, the swiping, as I'm walking around the side of the car. And it's, the charger instantly knows what's going on. So it's not like it adds any extra time. Maybe it adds seconds. But I just wanted to show off that I've now figured out how to charge my car quickly. And that's pretty nice.
Yeah, someday we'll have like near field communication, so the charger just senses. I did read a story that the US DOT is going to come up with minimum standards for chargers because it is a slightly chaotic ecosystem at the moment. There are different networks and different standards. There's different connectors. That has to get streamlined, but I hope whoever's making those standards just sees the delta between the Tesla experience and other, and focuses on let's replicate the Tesla experience, because that's really what you want. You want to just pick the nozzle and plug it in like you do with a gas pump, right? You don't have to fuss with buttons and phones. I mean, sometimes the pump makes you jump through a few hoops, which is annoying, but anyway, I just want consumers to feel like 100% confident. Yes, I can travel long distance, short distance, whatever, right? And then eventually we'll get like in-road charging and wireless charging and all kinds of other ways that are just going to really make our lives wonderful and super easy.
I think there's just going to be a whole bunch of plugs everywhere. Every plug's going to have a little RFID reader. There's going to be an RFID output right next to your plug. And it's just going to be seamless. And go boop and plug it in. We're going to plug in all over the place. And it's going to become really easy. Because if you can fuel your car at the supermarket for 20 minutes, at the bank for 10 minutes, at your house 3/4 of the time, at your office. If there's a charger at your gym, each one of these places are going to add 20. For a mile, a level 2 charge, or for 1 hour at a level 2 charger, you can do anywhere from 25 to 40, maybe 50 miles of range added to my Tesla prior. And same with my Hyundai. So, that's just hanging out at the gym for an hour. Go shopping, add 10, 20 miles, 30 miles, whatever it is. And you do that 3, 4, 5 times, and suddenly you're full. Because on average, your daily isn't burning off that. And if we have chargers at work, then it's done. That is if any of us ever go into an office place again. In which case, you're going to have chargers at home, and we're done. So we're in the early stages of it, figuring it out. Looking forward to the solutions. Looking forward to be able to do really seamless, thoughtless, long-term road trips. Right now, I have to work at it. In the Tesla, I didn't have to work hard, but still had to work at it and pay attention to it. I'm looking forward to not caring anymore. Just being like, just like a gas station. You just drive until you can.
Yeah.
So
totally with you.
So charging experience getting better.
Let's talk about overcoming construction challenges in the Northeast. You found a story in Solar Power World. What are the construction challenges in the Northeast if you don't know?
Well, the one I was talking about with this story is highly applicable to my current life, which is rocks in the dirt and what's underneath that dirt. And it's just tons of rocks. And it just so happens I'm doing a project right now with AP Solar. They're our racking manufacturer. They came out and they did a pole test, and they told us that 40% of the poles, 50% of the poles had rocks. And so we're going to be doing a rock grinder. We're going to have our ground screw so we can hopefully get around those rocks, some of them. And so I just thought it was neat seeing the pictures of all the projects on the sides of hills and in really rocky areas.
Yeah, that
totally
is a really rocky
me.
site right there. I mean, it looks like a quarry, for God's sakes.
Yeah,
but they managed, right? So that's cool, and that's a great site to solarize because you're you're obviously not going to be growing agricultural products on that site,
Correct.
except maybe a little bit of grass. So rocks under the soil, yeah. And luckily, we don't have a lot of problems with that. We do have shallow bedrock in some parts of Illinois. That can be a challenge, where you then have to pre-drill. We do driven pile construction most places, very happily so. And you know, if you're a landowner and you don't understand this, solar on a field is just steel piles driven or screwed into the ground, and then the panels are mounted on top of that structure. And so it's very little actual stuff in the ground. It's very light on the land. Steel is not toxic, right? So if you're treating the land well after it turns into a solar farm, you have really nice organic farm ground. For example, here in Illinois, take industrial farm ground. 25 years later, after being a solar farm, you've got organic farm ground. If you want to convert it back, you can.
That's why I kind of like the sheep grazing on solar farms, because after 25 years, 35 years of sheep grazing your land, you're going to have some really good soil.
Yeah. Agrivoltaics is a wonderful and quickly evolving field. What about slope, though, John? Have you ever worked on any high slope or sites with lots of terrain?
Not me, not me. So far, I'm a just a standard, regular, flat ground, flat roof guy who's yeah, easy stuff. I'm doing this rocky system, which one of our maybe the next article, but my project of the week is I'm just doing this rocky system. So now anything that pops up talking about rocks and pounding on the ground, it's immediately triggering me to pay attention so I don't make any mistakes on this project.
Yeah, I mean, AP is a great racking company. AP Alternatives. Hope to see you guys. Shout out to AP Alternatives. Hope to see you guys at Midwest Solar Expo. This photo on site. I mean, this photo here is pointing out the weather hazards. Okay, so snow, but this site also just looks extremely rocky.
Yeah.
And I mean,
And on a mountainside.
you could see how the array didn't have to be even tilted, right? It's just planted flat on the side of the mountain, which is already tilted.
That's
it
awesome.
looks like a ski hill almost. So, but there is snow load. Okay.
Listen, whatever tool they're using to attach this product to the stone can handle massive amounts of load. And then, as long as they don't have really cheap, thin frame, they should be able to handle some snow loads. I just thought that was a great image. I mean, a snow-covered mountainside with solar on it. The only people that might get mad about that are billy goats, because the mountain lions can hide under the solar panels really well, and then the goats are going to be like, got me again.
Do we have any mountain lions left in the Northeast?
In the Northeast, nah, I think we killed everything up here.
Yeah.
Maybe there's like coyote dogs or something like that.
Sure.
So that's it.
Frost heave is a consideration for sure for most racking solutions. The key there is to get below the frost line, so that it's not pulling or wanting to pull your pile out of the ground. Some companies do go to extremes with pre-drilling and putting a rock foundation that you then put the pile inside, so the rock is going to be excluded from that frost heave. But I think the key is just getting below the frost line, which is here in the Midwest, I think around 36 to 48 inches. It's not super deep. But do you have a rule of thumb for frost in the Northeast?
I don't yet. I've not developed one. I've been told one, though, that we have to consider. And I was told that in the South Coast, we only need to worry about 2 to 3 feet where I'm at. So I'm in New England, but I'm in New England light. And because we're close to the water and there's a constant current coming up the east coast of the US, we're much warmer than the rest of the state. So they say, yeah, 36 inches is good enough, and if you need to, you could get away with lesser, is what was joked about. But with our sites, this is my first ground mount that I'm really detailed involved with. We have to go in, I don't know, 6 feet, 5 feet with our screw anyway. So we're not worried about it at all. And I don't think we're going to have much ground freeze too much at this site. I mean, maybe we'll have it once or twice per year, but it's not going to be deep because just the region that I'm in, it's not going to be terrible at all.
Well, you're doing some community solar development in New York State, and
Development, not necessarily construction though, but yes, we're at the edges of having to deal with that. We're not going to be hardware specifiers though, so we have to be conscious of it and not pick a bad site. So I don't know those details. I got to hang out with the smart people. So hey, you know what? I'm going to transition to the next project, unless you have other ones in this article.
No, that's
that you
fine.
wanna
We can talk about the next story.
Next story that I want to talk about is my project of the week. We're building 226 kW DC of solar. It's ground mount. It's for a developer based out of New York. I am going to be employed. I'm going to be on the payroll of the contractor, and I'm going to be labor on the job. I feel I've been so far away from touching any projects for so many years that I'm just a paper pusher now with soft hands. And so I've talked to my contractor who's building it, and I said, hey man, what do you think about me being on site? And he goes, well, depends. Are you good or are you bad? I'm like, I'm solid at labor. So I'm going to be reporting from the site, giving some good nuances. I'm going to look at this as sort of kind of a continuing education / get outside for a month or two. And so I'm going to just be labor on this 226 kilowatt site. And if you would do me a favor, you could share that one image that I posted in the room at the very bottom of the document, I believe.
Is it not,
and it's just...
Is it not sharing?
Oh, don't see it yet. Not sharing yet. But that one image it's nothing special. It's just this morning the utility came out. Oh, there it is. Now we got that image. So that is, it's a stake from the utility about where they're going to be installing a pole. That's on private land next to a gravel road, and that was good because now we finally have specified where we're going to be connecting our solar power system. We've been designing, purchasing hardware, going through balance of system, doing lots of work, and now we have a project official.
I assume it's going to be fixed tilt.
Yes, very small, 226. I mean,
what kind of
maybe
racking
we could
are you using? Do you know?
AP.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah. That's why I brought them up.
This is the ground screw project.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's why this is all like, in my head, and as I'm looking at the news, I'm thinking about stuff I'm gonna have to deal with, and you're gonna see pictures of me carrying ground screws, making noises, because strong, and I'm just looking forward to it because. If anything, it'll help me be a better sales guy, be a better business owner, touching
Absolutely.
it. Because I need it. I need some continuing education. So that's project of the week. It's a good project. I'm looking forward to it.
Good
I'll
luck with that.
take lots of pictures.
I think we should also talk about this 26 gigawatt green hydrogen project in Australia now.
So what's bigger than the project in and of itself is the fact that it's BP who bought 40% of it and controlling...
BP, the oil company, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
They are an expert at distributing liquid fuels around the earth. And they also have the money to control politicians around the earth. And that means they might be able to move this project forward. And we might literally have a 26
So
gigawatt.
give us a description of the project. This is a solar and hydrogen project?
It's a solar and wind farm somewhere in southwest Australia. It's like thousands of acres, 26 gigawatts of wind and solar. And I believe there's some energy storage, but then there's the grid there. and they're going to be using it to power hydrogen electrolyzers.
Yeah.
And then they're going to export, and it might be hydrogen or ammonia. I keep hearing both back and forth. I think ammonia is easier to transport than hydrogen, bigger molecule, but there's extra steps to convert it from hydrogen into ammonia. I don't know that process at all, but I know that they're related, and it's a fuel generation facility, and that's its goal. Its goal is to just it'll pump out some electricity to the grid to help stabilize it, but the rest of it's going to be to generate hydrogen.
Yeah. So it's called the Asian Renewable Energy Hub, and it's being developed in a part of Australia called the Pilbara region. So, you've got this huge continent called Australia next door to another huge continent called Asia, but Asia happens to be very crowded, so they have limited land resources. Australia happens to be very sparsely populated. I think the population of Australia is something like 50 million, isn't it?
I'm going to say 32.
A few tens of millions of people. So they're swimming in land.
Ooh,
they're swimming
25.
in sunlight. 25?
25.69 as of the end of 2020.
I missed by a factor of 2. But it just makes good sense that you have that huge solar resource, or solar and wind in this case. And but they're thinking big. 26 gigawatts.
Gigawatts.
A big project in the U.S. is a gigawatt now.
Yes.
In Indiana, the largest solar farm is under construction. That's a 1.3 gigawatt solar farm, 13,000 acre solar farm.
And there's two 20 gigawatt plus solar facilities in Australia being developed.
Yeah.
One of them is to export electricity / hydrogen to like Singapore, I think. I think maybe it's just electricity.
Right. Yeah.
So it's, go big, go home. Australian mantra.
Yeah.
But the biggest piece, though, BP. BP's involved with that one. And so that just kind of made me go, ooh, very interesting. Very, very interesting.
Yeah, I heard on a podcast this morning about a Danish wind company that used to be an oil giant. I can't remember the name now, but it's Ørsted.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Danish oil company, they used to be known as Dink or Dong.
Yeah, Dong
Danish,
Energy.
Yeah, and then
Is
they
Dong
turned it
now
into...
Ørsted? Is that the same company?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Thank God they changed their name. The oil companies can make the energy transition. It's a question of will they, right? And they're conflicted. I get it, right? Because they have a huge amount of money invested in assets and development pipeline, et cetera, et cetera. But if they recognize that we can't just keep pumping fossils out of the ground if we want to avoid catastrophic climate change, if they do the right thing, they can make the transition. There's money in wind, solar, and battery storage or green hydrogen, right? There's plenty of money in that. And this host pointed out that Ørsted's stock has done great since they became a wind company. So, to the contrary, I think there's going to be, and I'm not the only person saying this, there's going to be a lot of stranded assets in the fossil fuel industry, and whether that's pipelines or rigs or power plants, et cetera, wake up, smell the coffee. The energy transition is a force to reckon with. It's like a tide, right? The finance, the money is just flowing into wind, solar, and storage, and out of fossils. So, with that, let's wrap up the show. How can our listeners reach you, Mr. Commercial Solar Guy?
If they wanted to, they could come to my new home in my new home office in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I'm in the
Nice.
CIC building. It's really cool. It's the Center for Cooperation, something to that effect. It's associated with the MIT people, and I have a new co-working space with great desk space. Still got to find myself a stand-up desk location. There's only one I've seen, and it's in a pretty populated area, and I talk a lot, so I don't want to be annoying to everybody. But it's got great outside space. They give us fruit for snacks. So much better than having bad snacks because I eat everything like an animal. So Cambridge, Massachusetts is where I will spend a decent amount of my time working when I'm in the office, and otherwise sometimes in the field down at my 226 kW project. But of course, commercialsolarguy.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, all kinds of different places. And so appreciate that, Tim. And Tim Montague, solar developer extraordinaire. What types of project building owners, landowners should reach out to you if they have a Midwest project question?
Yeah, anybody in the Midwest, Illinois, Wisconsin, Ohio, Missouri, and even Minnesota. Even though Minnesota's struggling a little bit, we would look at a project in Minnesota. Um, and don't forget about Midwest Solar Expo. Come to Minneapolis, say hi to me, have a drink with me, and but yeah, I want to hear from facility owners and landowners. We're developing community solar projects. That's our number one priority: community solar and large behind the meter commercial industrial projects. So schools, municipalities, wastewater treatment facilities. If you have a landfill that you want to solarize, talk to me. And if you have a factory, if you make stuff and use a lot of power, you can reduce your power bill by 50 to 75% with a rooftop solar array, and it's no joke. So give me a buzz. You can reach me on Twitter, TG Montague. That's my Gmail handle as well. And cleanpower.group is my website. And with that, I will say, hey, subscribe to the show. Give us a rating and review on Apple or Spotify. That's how the show grows, and we get more listeners and more people interested in the energy transition and knowing what's going on with that and what a huge economic opportunity it is. And you can find all that content at cleanpower.group/podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel too. We have a growing YouTube channel. All this content goes there, whether it's the lives or the pre-recorded interviews. So if you like to see John's pretty face, you know where to go. With that, have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you in 3 weeks. Take care, John.